great to be here. Thank you for having me, and thanks to everyone who made this incredible time so special for, I think, everybody who's here from out of town. That means you're from real America, so welcome to Washington, D.C. And I have to say that, first of all, I like to give little news reports because you guys, I know you're on your Blackberries and stuff, but you guys are missing lots of news. So I have a report from the protests. Okay, you ready? Okay. So I had a chance to mingle. It just came in from New York, and I just had a chance to mingle down in Wall Street, and I took my life into my own hands. But this is a very energized group at the protests. They're very excited. They're very into their own moment right now, if unwashed. The celebrated filmmaker, I know a lot of fans out there, Michael Moore was down there. You're very cold. This is a cold audience. Now, honestly, really, you have to give him credit. He's an incredible filmmaker. You know, he says what he believes, and it's a Friday. I'm trying to be really charitable. Come on. You should have seen the tourists lined up around Michael Moore. This was unbelievable. Well, to be fair, I did some reporting. Half of them mistook him for the Freedom Tower. And half thought they were watching the Macy's Thanksgiving Day Parade balloon flotation. Apparently, he didn't get Michelle's message, let's move. Now, look, I mean, Michael Moore is really excited because the president's going on the offensive. And look, they've had a rough couple of years. If you're a liberal, it's been a rough couple of years. He's so excited about this moment that he actually washed his baseball cap. You know it's bad for the president, the poor guy, when his approval ratings are lower than that of the protesters. So that's never a good moment. But the movement's spreading. I mean, come on, how many people like the Tea Party out here, are members of the Tea Party? Let's raise your hand, right? I didn't say how many dressed up in period garb, you in the third row. My goodness, where is Betsy Ross when you need her? The movement's grown, the other movement, they're calling it the left-wing Tea Party movement, by the way. But it's grown. Now it's spread to New Orleans, Boston, Los Angeles. And what I don't understand is the D.C. occupation is nothing new, right? They've been occupying the healthcare system. They've been occupying the financial sector for the last couple of years. They've been occupying the Supreme Court. And they've basically been occupying every aspect of our lives. So I'm bringing you a message today. The D.C. occupation ends next November. Did any of you in your spare time watch the president's press conference yesterday? How many people? Oh, 4 of you. Good. No lives like me. Well, he said that the protesters represent the broader concern in the nation over the economy, okay? After spending some time down at the protests, I will tell you, these protesters don't represent the broader concern of their college dormitory, let alone the broader nation. Remember a few years back, by the way, when the former, did I say former House Speaker Nancy Pelosi? That's not really fair, you astroturfers. Well, she called the Tea Party movement, you know, astroturf protesters. Now she called down God's blessing on the occupiers. So the Tea Party folks, who last time I checked actually cleaned up after themselves at a rally, you know, didn't leave behind trash, knew how to use a porta-john, by the way, without spillage. But this crowd is doing something that Obama didn't do. I've got to say, down in Wall Street, they are saving and creating thousands of sanitation jobs in New York City. So that's fantastic. And I say at least the Tea Party people can read their own signs. Right? Yeah, they quote these very obscure documents like the Declaration of Independence and the Constitution. It's like you have to wade through the Chairman Mao hats and the Che Guevara T-shirts to actually get to a point. Look, the fact of the matter is, all kidding aside, I think the protesters that we're seeing covered so much, Herman Cain was right when he said this is all kind of a distraction. right from the president's record. I mean, in the end, it's either you worked and your ideas worked or they didn't. And right now, we see what's unfolding with the help of our union friends and Mr. Soros and all those who are kind of stoking the fires down there. We've seen this kind of emerge as an example of what happens when the entitlement culture in the United States is allowed to flourish, right? Because a lot of people who are down at these protests believe that if you made it, right, if you became a success, then you must have cheated and you must have stolen from someone, so now it's okay for me to take from you, or for the government to pick your pocket and give it to me. In fact, that's not only okay, it's required. That's how they look at the world. And you get the sense that a lot of these folks, to quote Nancy Pelosi, God bless them, a lot of these folks really enjoy the profession of occupying, right? That's their occupation. If they have to check a box, it's occupying. I'm an occupier, that's my occupation. It's obviously a lot harder to get a job in the Obama economy, but nevertheless, it's a lot harder. The Tea Party people, you know, usually can go to a rally, go to an event, and then they go home, okay? These people go to their parents' basements for the most part. Now, we read the great works of Edmund Burke. You know, they are on Craigslist all day. I mean, it's okay, but I mean, we have to get a little deeper than that. Look, we have a lot to do, I think, as conservatives. We have a lot of work to be done with the new generations of Americans who are living in, as I call it, the Obama economy, because they've never really had to have this argument, right, about the best way to guide the country forward. We have to introduce them to an optimistic vision that will help them and us as a country emerge out of what is currently a period of darkness. You know, it is not morning in America. It is nighttime in America right now. For too long, I think, we've been hearing about different versions of conservatism that we're trying to sell to folks. You know, there's big government conservatism. Remember that a few years ago? There was compassionate conservatism, you know, because the other types of conservatives are obviously really mean. There was American greatness conservatism. We heard that written about by some of my old friends years past. And of course, there's neoconservatism. And I don't think it's a great idea for us as conservatives to modify ourselves in that manner. In the tradition of C.S. Lewis's great book, Mere Christianity, I'd like to talk to you today about mere conservatism. Now, what does it mean to be a conservative? Like, I think a lot of folks watching on C-SPAN, you know, you guys might have a particular view of conservatism. It's anti-science, you know, they're a bunch of troglodytes, you know, they dress up in period clothing, they do sometimes, yes. You look like you should have been on the cover of my new book with that outfit. But really, as conservatives, we operate in this tradition where we try to warn against the excesses of utopianism. Remember, you know, speaking back to Burke, you know, Burke warned of the excesses of the French Revolution. And for over 200 years now, conservatives have resisted what appears to be the easy solution to a problem. And, you know, the latest ivory tower scheme cooked up at a late-night seminar at Brown or Harvard or Yale or my alma mater. And that's why we as conservatives thought it was a good idea to dispose of Marxism, except for the salons where President Obama used to hang out. And, you know, the idea of prosperity without effort. We didn't think that was a good path to go down. And that's why we stood so strongly against Obamacare, because we understood that, you know, the road to bureaucratic hell is always going to be paved with good intentions. We also, you know, remain skeptical about plans to reorganize our economy. You know, the massive bailout culture in the United States. Actually, a lot of the protesters down on Wall Street were talking about those ideas. And we also think that it's probably a good idea to be very judicious and careful before we restructure our economy due to fears about things like global warming. That we have to really be careful when we move forward in these grand, you know, so-called scientific conclusions that that take a very complex and very, I would say, conservative approach. We, I think, realize that public policy, right, is tough. It's not easy. It's not simple to do the things that comprise public policy making. And we think that it's useful to see and learn from what happened that came before us, right? The mistakes, the pitfalls, and the things that worked. And we recognize that societies are extremely delicate and they're fragile, and that the best changes that we make in a society are those that are grounded in the traditions and histories of our people. And, you know, liberals, we know this. I mean, God bless them, but they're always chasing after the latest fad and the hottest new idea. Basically, liberals today are the Kardashians of American politics. And our role is to, you know, in the famous phrase of William F. Buckley, our role is to stand athwart history yelling stop. Our friends on the left who seem to believe that, you know, every popular idea in Europe is going to work here, you know, well, you know, that's what they believe. But we're sensitive. We're really sensitive to the history and preferences of the American people, what works with our past and our own unique experience. And so we pay attention, are supposed to at least, to what the Founding Fathers said, what they wrote, what they thought. And this afternoon I want to talk to you very briefly about 3 principles that I think we have to keep in mind as we move forward into this historic election year. First, you cannot sustain a great nation on a decaying foundation. We, the people, are the foundation of this country. And I'm here to tell you that our nation will only be as virtuous as we are in our collective personal lives. And look, we all have flaws. I say this to my staff and on the air all the time. I'm the most flawed person out there. We all make our mistakes. Of course we do. We're human. But our ideals, right, our bedrock values of honor, faith, modesty, liberty, and yes, patriotism, these are our mainstays. This is where social conservatism comes into play. Too many people out there, and some are running for office, I think, they regard social conservatism as a box to be checked, so they can then move on to talk about the issues that really matter, foreign policy and the economy. But that's the wrong way to look at things. I think it's backwards, actually. Because you can't have a strong foreign policy unless you have citizens who understand the concepts of duty and loyalty and charity. And you cannot have a successful economic policy unless you have citizens who believe in hard work and thrift and, yes, in personal responsibility. And a news flash for our left-wing friends out there. Social conservatism is not only about issues like abortion or pornography or marriage, as important as those issues are. As I tried to show in this book I just wrote, Of Thee I Zing, we should be really concerned about the countless ways in which our society has become more crass, more depraved, more toxic, more pornified. Think of, you're not supposed to clap for pornified. I'm just kidding. Don't you hate that when you end up clapping? You're like, wait a second, that looks bad when I clap for that. She just said pornified. Yeah! I do the same thing. Speaking of pornified, think of Rihanna on stage, you know, wrapped in electrical wire that's supposed to pass as a dress, okay? No, that's electrical wire. I want to plug you in, not listen to you sing. Or, you know, the moronic, boozy antics of the cast of the Jersey Shore, or maybe, you know, any random episode of The View. No, they are very nice to me when I go on, as long as I don't talk about politics. They're very, very nice. Seriously, what we watch, what we produce, what we consume in the culture, this is who we are. And when you go to a restaurant, as I did not so long ago, and you happen to, don't you hate when you go to a restaurant and it's prom night, right? Has that ever happened to you? There's like 30 kids spill out of a stretch Hummer, and 15-year-olds, and oh no, I just wanted a quiet night out. Well, you see 15-year-old girls with hemlines near their pubic bones and their necklines starting at their navels. Something is wrong. Okay, something is wrong. Okay, my neckline is a little high on this dress. But look, we can admit it, right? We all fall down, we all make mistakes, but don't you all think we need a cultural detox? Right? We have to be able to do better than this. There has to be a different way. I mean, if there were a national clinic to go through this 12-step program, we all should go through it. And the long-term path that we're on as a nation is inextricably linked to where our culture is at any given moment, because the culture produces the politicians that we always seem to be throwing our hands up over, right? I mean, that is the culture. They emerge from that culture. And politics reacts to the culture, to the habits, to the beliefs, and to the manners of a people. Now, the question is, are we fit as a nation to govern ourselves? We have to ask that question of ourselves. We kind of get the government we deserve at any given point. Well, of course, we are fit to govern our nation if we're willing to stand for moral clarity, for merit, for talent, and swear off, once again, that easy path oftentimes of the lowest common denominator, or the path where the other guy's pulling the wagon as we ride in the wagon. It's hard to pull the wagon. The wagon's sometimes heavy, sometimes your back hurts, sometimes you don't feel like pulling. But guess what? We all have to pull. And we have to mean it when we pull. We can't do it begrudgingly. And we have to engage in this culture if we want to change it. We can't, I should say, wall ourselves off as much as we want to. You want to just go into your little cocoon, and you want to stay in your own little communities and your own little echo chambers, and I'm just not going to look at that. I'm not going to focus on that. Well, I understand the impulse, but I'm here today to tell you that is a really perilous path to go down. Because while we're walling ourselves off, our kids and our grandkids, they're engaging with this culture. Their friends are in this culture. Their acquaintances are what they're listening to in their earbuds. Get to know who their friends are. They're friends in the culture, they're real friends, yes, they're virtual friends. Understand them, get to know them. We cannot be good examples for new generations if we are all talk but no action. We must be action. We have to be able to talk about conservatism and look like we're having a good time doing it, right? I am so blessed. I have a wonderful job. Every day I get up and I get to talk for 3 hours a day about the issues that I care about. Sometimes silly issues, a lot of times really serious issues. But I am so blessed. And I wake up and I try to think, what can I say today that my kids will hear or my kids will be able to listen to years from now and say to themselves, Mommy made it matter. She did something to make it matter. I try to do that. I don't always succeed, but I really try to do that. And I think what we're seeing happening in the country is not about political parties. It's about a desperate desire to leave behind something better for the next generation. And the second principle, briefly, of conservatism that we must embrace as we move forward is that the duty of any government, the most important duty for any government, is the security and sovereignty and safety of her people. Look, our government is supposed to protect our independence, not make us more dependent. And part of that is realizing that we are only going to be free as long as we're strong. We just talked about how we need to be strong as individuals and as families, as moms, as dads, as consumers of the culture. But we need to be strong as a nation. And I think we don't think about that. We think about these individual policy battles, whether it's healthcare or the budget debate or the spending bill or China bills, and we think of those, by themselves. We need to think about it in their totality, because as America grows weaker, our options grow fewer. We are seeing this play out right now. Have we confronted some pretty key questions in this conversation yet, in this election year? How do we plan to deal with the rise of China, really? What will the world look like when China is a dominant economic power? What sort of alliances will we need in this future? How will a world look, and how will our families' lives be different in a world where America is no longer dominant? These are big questions, and no, there isn't really one easy answer to them. But these are the types of issues, not the issues of what's painted on a rock in some piece of land in Texas, but these are the types of issues that need to be focused on in this conversation. When I hear questions, what's on your iPod, or, what team do you want to win in the NCAA tournaments? When I hear these questions, asked by, members of the media, these are good people, but, this is what much of the media has become today. Do any of you do what I do? Do you kind of stop and think, our country is on the verge of losing its dominant status in the world. We are on the verge of squandering that. And we're asking about what your favorite rock group is, or like what you like to eat for breakfast. I mean, it's fun when Ellen asks those questions, but I don't really need to have those asked in other, serious political forums. The U.S. government exists, second principle, to serve the American people, not the other way around. The U.S. government exists to serve us, not anyone who happens to find a way to get here, including the Obama's relatives. This is our government. This is our land. It doesn't belong to the world or to anyone else. Third, we have to return to the basics about the economy. A nation becomes rich when it encourages what? When it encourages innovation, excellence in education. The president's spoken a lot about that lately. And when it sells goods and services that other nations want to buy. Period. And a nation can't become rich by creating housing bubbles, by floating more debt and more debt and more debt, or printing more money and more money. A nation cannot become rich by outsourcing its technology, its factories, its intellectual property to other countries. We have really dug ourselves into a hole, and it hasn't just happened over the past few years, let's face it. This has been going on for a long, long time, long predating Barack Obama. He was still leafleting on the street corner when this stuff was happening. Yeah, that was a critical qualification for running the biggest economy in the world. Well, he's still leafleting, but no one's taking the leaflets. They're pretending that they don't see him now. When a leafleter goes, half off at the nail salon, and you don't want to ignore it, you just pretend you don't see them, or you take it and you throw it in the wastebasket. That's what the American voters are doing right now with what he's leafleting. A government that lives within its means, simple concept, hard to execute, doesn't waste our money, a culture that recognizes the importance of hard work, and that insists on the responsibility of each and every citizen. Look, the president can't even take into account that principle when it comes to things like Solyndra, right? Everyone has to stand on his own. Companies have to stand on their own. You have an innovative idea, great. And I know Republicans have gone down this road before as well. But if it's such a great idea, the private sector will fund it. think the president should just do all of his big green energy speeches wearing sunglasses from now on, by the way. Wouldn't that be cool? Remember that song, The Future's So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades? No one knows 80s music in this room. Look, we found out recently, I think there are a lot of friends. A lot of people have a lot of friends happen to make a lot of money in communist China, and there's a lot of big companies that make a lot of money. I understand that. But when are we going to say it might not be such a good idea for China to exert so much influence over the U.S. economy and our Congress? By the way, part of this is celebrating people who are successful and not demonizing them, not saying they don't know what the meaning of the word sacrifice is. I always laugh when I hear that from the president. You know, when are we going to sacrifice with our family vacations or, you know, I know it's really important to, you know, hit the Botswanan safari, but maybe in a time where a country's a great struggle and we're very stretched for money, maybe it's not such a good time to do all that. So sacrifice always seems to go one way with liberals, and I say it's time to stop it. Now, I love the signs, by the way, over at the rally, speaking of these principles, you know, tax the rich, beat the rich, eat the rich. I have my own sign. You got that, C-SPAN? No, I'm not going to hug myself. Now, why do I say that? It's like, remember, you know, I support Save the Children. Well, save the rich people, I say. Right? Because they actually create opportunities for others. Stoking class envy might sound good, and it might get you some applause lines, you know, over at, you know, Warren Buffett's headquarters and so forth, but it's not really going to do much for the economy, and it's not going to do much for job creation, and it's probably just going to end up meaning that a lot of people are laid off. And that's a shame, because the job creators, oftentimes the wealthy, are the backbone to charity in this country. They're the backbone of innovation. They're the backbone of our intellectual capital and the growth that is necessary for us to remain that dominant and, yes, good force for our children, for our families, and, yeah, for the rest of the world. When you eat the rich or beat the rich, or what are they saying now, behead the rich, that's the latest, do you really think you accomplished much? Except funneling a lot more money to Washington, D.C. so they can shovel it out at programs that don't really create any jobs. In closing, let me just say, I don't think we need a new branding campaign. People are always looking for the new. How are you going to brand conservatism? I think we just have to really stand on what's already been established and time-tested. And we have to speak the truth with passion and clarity. And the truth about self-reliance and freedom and the free market, about the role of faith and morals in our society, how critical they are to a thriving republic, the truth about the infinite promise, the core goodness of the American people, the truth, Mr. President, about the country we all love. More control by the state and less liberty for individuals is a recipe for America's certain demise. We've already seen this film before. It flopped when Jimmy Carter tried it. It flopped in Europe. And now it's the most colossal flop of all time. It's called the Obama administration. What we need today is not neoconservatism or paleoconservatism or big government conservatism or American greatness conservatism. What we need is mere conservatism. That is enough. We are enough. Thanks, guys.